Chapter 6, 1400 hours, April 14th, 2539, Military Calendar. Edge of Boundaries Star System aboard UNSC Punic-class supercarrier Neferis. Captain Fulton had just returned to his seat on the bridge in time to see the final preparations for an exit from slipspace to Boundaries planetary system. It was imperative that the leader of the ship be present even during routine maneuvers, in order to instill confidence in the crew, to set an example for the junior grade officers, and to calm the nerves. No doubt there were plenty of crew uneasy about the latest assignment. Everyone knew what they were about to get into. How did anyone think they would fare with such a small complement of ships? Including the Neferis, Captain Fulton had been detailed 2 destroyers, 2 light cruisers, and the inbound Razor-class Prowler Death's Hand, which, according to his wristwatch, should be arriving to the star system shortly as well. The captain took a deep gulp of his mid-rats coffee, a tepid slurry of black coffee scrounged up from the galley on his way from his cabin. The mug was raised to his lips with its familiar bitterness, and was drawn down the dregs in a moment. He finished, and as if on cue with his thoughts, he felt the metaphorical weight of command lift with the weightless transition back to normal space. The familiar azure light appeared several kilometers in front of the supercarrier moments later. 1 million micro-black holes generated by their sizable Shaw-Fukushima slipspace drive tore a hole back through space-time to deposit the vessel safely back into their 3-dimensional galaxy. The transition from slipspace to normal space marked the start of Operation Nimble Guardian's mission clock. He surveyed the cramped deck as the universe reappeared before him. A dazzling network of lightning and temporal distortion played across the forward view screen to give way to unfamiliar stars. To their port side, the scanners displayed an eccentric elliptical path of a gas giant. To their starboard was their destination. Several million kilometers beyond lay the local star, Abellio. Situated on navigation sat Lieutenant Kaoru Huang, a petite but fierce Luna OCS graduate who had seen 2 worlds glassed since the start of the Covenant's genocidal campaign. She had been given orders right out of training to report to a larger Marathon-class cruiser, the UNSC Run the Line. But upon its maiden voyage out of Mars, it was ravaged during one of Battle Group X-Ray's fleet maneuvers. In her former commanding officer's tactical brilliance, he had managed to save a modest amount of the crew and the remains of her ship by initiating a death roll to bleed off enough thermal damage from incoming plasma to limp away to safety. She had reported to the Neferis sometime after. He had never met an officer with more guile and determination than her. His survey of the bridge landed him next at the communications suite. Lieutenants junior grade Emilio Morales and Peter Shanahan sat conversing over a monitor display. These 2 were very familiar, having gone through the exact same training pipeline and even growing up together. In the militaries of the 26th century, this was just unheard of. Men and women across dozens of worlds were thrown together in training companies without regard of nationality, creed, or birth planet. The 2 always joked that they were meant to win the war together. There was just no other way around it. He thought it best to put them in the bridge to see what they were capable of. Their time on the Neferis would be a good way to cut their teeth. Captain Fulton stood out of his chair to stretch his legs and charge his thermos. Making his way toward the bulkhead leading to the command deck, he saw his executive officer walk toward him. Commander Eliza Shaw was a seasoned sailor herself, a no-nonsense, by-the-book type of leader. Her command philosophy was one of a strict adherence to protocol with tried-and-true methodology. He pressed his side to the bulkhead situated beyond the communications suite to make way for his executive officer. Pressing a thumb on the latch of the thermos, it popped off and into the dispenser. A satisfying gurgle bubbled near the brim. Steaming Arabica beans from the jungles formerly known as Nicaragua frothed to the rim of the glass. "The field of battle is no place for theatrics," she'd say in the wardroom. "We're there for a reason. And that reason is to bring the men and women of our charge home in one piece." Period. One day, he'd tell her that this was why she was passed for promotion and command of a lesser vessel. She had the experience, technical knowledge, and her heart was in it. But until she learned what it meant to improvise and adapt to the situation presented in combat, she'd never be a ship captain. "Sir, transition to normal space complete," Lieutenant Huang said. "All hands, this is Captain Fulton. Stand to and be prepared for a warm reception. We don't know if the Covenant have beaten us to the system or not." Although he knew it was unlikely that the aliens were already here. Based on the Prowler Corps estimation of the Covenant's movements, he wanted a solid wake-up call for his crew. "Scan the sector. I want probes deployed to the far side of that planet on our starboard side, Lieutenant Huang." He rotated his gaze. "Comms. Inform Lieutenant Commander Jones in engineering to answer dead slow and get those slipspace capacitors charging. We might have to make a quick getaway." "Aye, sir," cascaded through the bridge. A tense moment ticked by on the mission clock. The Vigilance, Dunkirk, Hydaspes, and Pelium arrived moments later, grouped as close as USNC slipspace capabilities allowed. Humankind's mastery of the mysterious 11 dimensions of slipspace paled in comparison to the Covenant, so millions of kilometers in drift were expected and usual. "Sir, line-of-sight tight beam communication link established between Neferis and incoming friendlies." A warm hue tinted the air around the captain. The disembodied voice of Aretes reported on the bridge speakers before the soldierly avatar appeared again. Lieutenant Morales was next to report. "Receiving positive handshakes from all vessels." "Oh." He trailed off. "What is it, son?" Captain Fulton ears perked. He didn't appreciate being held in suspense. Suspense meant hesitation. Hesitation on the battlefield meant death. "Sir, it seems the Death's Hand beat us to the punch. Lieutenant Shanahan and I were just discussing their best speed slipspace jump from Reach. I didn't think they'd be able to beat us here," he explained. "It seems they're hailing us, putting it on the main screen now." A ship-to-ship transmission relay appeared on Captain Fulton's datapad. He knew at once who it was. "Alistair, still too slow, I see." A familiar face appeared on screen. An elderly woman with thinning salt and pepper hair appeared before him. She sat in a raised position. Her body language betrayed how relaxed she was, even while speaking to a superior. She sported a cheeky grin on her face between the wrinkle marks afforded after so many years of combat stress and fatigue. This woman before him had been a friend for many years, often serving in parallel capacities under the likes of Admirals Cole and Stanforth. And now again they crossed paths. He secretly hoped it would not be the last time. He had grown fond of the spook, as so many enlisted called their kind. It took a special type of cunning to be the captain of a prowler, modeled after the submarines of old Earth, patrolling and listening and observing under Earth's oceans for so many wars. These craft were light, nimble, and damn near impossible to find if the crew so wished it. The only reason Alistair knew of the Death's Hand now was because the woman before him wished it. "Ladies first, I always say," Captain Fulton retorted, sending a sarcastic quip in kind. Captain Elaine Keller was his shadow in the dark. She was his only prowler asset to assist with the reconnoiter and surveillance of hostile forces during this engagement. If all else failed, she would be relied upon to report back to High Hawk Com. Her lone vessel would very well may determine the success or failure of this operation. "It's good to see you again, sir. Unfortunately, I think it's prudent to skip the tea and crumpets on this one. We just established our patrol in Libration Point 1. Telemetry data is being sent over by my team right now. You should see the data on your screen momentarily." "Received, sir." It was Aretes who responded first. "Lieutenant Huang, dropping updated reconnaissance data to your station now." The Prowler commander continued. "It seems Lady Luck is with us for now. In the hour or so since positioning behind the planet, our scans have yet to detect any hostile activity. That meant no tau burst radiation, no echoes in slipspace, and no increase in signal traffic. That was good. It meant that the fleet still had time to make contact with Boundary. He just hoped that the government had already started preparations for evacuation. After a decade of fighting, he knew that every hour counted. Task Force Lima had no room for evacuees, so it would be up to the planetary government to arrange their affairs and start moving their population to safety. Excellent, Captain Fulton remarked. Have you initiated contact with the colony yet? Yes, sir, I was just getting to that. We deployed a Black Widow convoy a few minutes before your arrival, and just received an automated handshake response from the planet's AI. Designate Harvest Moon. If their orbital station hasn't detected the spike in Hawking radiation by now, my assessment is that we are safe to send encrypted broadcast message via our convoy. That AI will patch us through to their militia. Do it, Miss Keller. A faint message resonated through the bridge speakers, picking up the automated message on the UNSC E-band frequency. E-band, or Emergency Broadcast Channel, was a little-used public frequency typically reserved for units or organization in distress or imminent danger. Is an automated general distress code to any friendly human vessel. The United Earth Government sovereign territory boundary is under threat of likely hostile alien activity. Advise caution upon approach. Requesting assistance from any UNSC forces. Repeat. This is... Captain Fulton let the message repeat once more, weighing what he had just learned against their situation. Miss Keller, tactical analysis. Advise counter-response to planet boundary. He decided to play it safe. There simply weren't enough vessels under his command to contend in a heavyweight bout right now. He had the element of surprise, stealth, and the nimbleness of a light force. He needed to leverage these to the best of his ability. Our long-range scanners detect several vessels parked in the Terminator zone behind Boundary's only moon, Commander Keller said. Seems like they're waiting in ambush on the dark side of the satellite. Can't determine who or what they're waiting on. My bet? It's a trap. But for whom? I can't tell. Boundary wasn't a known hotbed for insurrectionist activity. He knew. Otherwise, he doubted FleetCom would dedicate this many assets to the protection and evacuation of its inhabitants. As terrible a conclusion that was to many, the UNSC simply didn't have enough resources to defend every world on every front, especially not one that curried favor to the innies. Lieutenant Morales, open a fleet-wide channel, Captain Fulton ordered. He stood and addressed the ship captains of Task Force Lima. All vessels, eyes up. We're hailing Boundary, but our prowler has picked up several vessels attempting to hide behind its moon. I'm not taking a chance on anything, so stand by. We're going to find out why a ghost fleet is lying in wait for us, and why they have failed to identify themselves. He flicked an index finger hovering over the data pad integrated into the sleeve of his uniform. Commander Keller will go under the assumption that they've prepared an ambush for the Covenant. Not us, but stay alert. It's possible that the colonists either weren't able to be contacted, and they're attempting to defend themselves. But there's no way to tell for certain. Commander, establish an uplink from our primary comm sensor to your buoy. Let the citizens of Boundary know we're here to help. Secondary communications relay slaved to Death's Hand convoy stationed 2 astronomical units from nearest planetary vector. Lieutenant Morales responded. The communications officer leaned forward in his chair and typed in a series of commands to verify the encrypted uplink and untensed as. The Nefarious began its message. To the citizens of Boundary, this is Captain Fulton of Task Force Lima. We're on station and ready to assist. Repeat, UNSC vessels on station and ready to assist. Over. A wash of static burst over the bridge speakers before the UNSC E-band transmission ceased its automated loop. The dull, monotone message was replaced by a strong and rugged voice. This is Harvest Moon. Speaking on behalf of the Office of Governor Melissa Huxley, Captain Fulton requesting the immediate attention of Task Force Lima in response to possible threat of Covenant invasion fleet. Understood, Harvest Moon. Requesting clarification and disposition of stationary craft orbiting Lagrange Point 2. Over. There was dead air for several seconds before an unknown female voice emulated from the communications display. I knew they'd send someone, the voice said as it hushed several chattering voices in the background. Several distinct voices silenced at her command. This is Governor Melissa Huxley of the United Earth Government. How can I assist you? "Greetings, Governor Huxley," Captain Fulton said. "Please indulge me on the deployment of your craft behind the planet's moon." Oh yes. Well, unfortunately, the message from FleetCom was very brief, and Admiral Cole did not speak very definitely. The woman paused for a moment, then spoke in a relieved but anxious tone. "We didn't know if anyone would come to our aid, so we began evacuation and fortification efforts on our own. As we're a cornerstone for agricultural production in this sector of human-controlled space, we have a sizable merchant marine force on the planet, you see." "Ma'am, with all due respect, don't dodge the question. Why are dozens of ships set for an ambush in our approach vector?" Captain Fulton was starting to become annoyed. He didn't need a jittery government talking head. He needed a reliable leader on the ground to coordinate his efforts. The longer she avoided answering his questions, the less inclined he was to assuage the good people of Boundary, staple of commerce or not. A new voice came on the speaker. "Captain Fulton, this is General Grant of the Boundary Militia. What Governor Huxley is trying to say is that we have given up as many ships as we could spare to set up a little ambush for our Covenant friends." "Ah, it's coming to me now." Aretes stood, stretching out his artificial legs from a cross-legged position on the bridge's holodeck. "They mean to use the gravitational rotation from the planet's moon to slingshot vessels, in a meteor trajectory to any forces, attempting to position themselves over the continent. They do have a smart AI on hand. With his help, it would theoretically be possible to destroy or incapacitate even a Covenant craft with a little luck." "Precisely," General Grant chimed in. "We have all other slipspace-capable craft moving into position on the far side of the continent, and hopefully, it's out of harm's way. We assume that when the bastards arrive, they'll scan the planet and see that most of our population is here in the capital and farther north." Captain Fulton's intelligence officer highlighted the silhouettes of several large and bulky vessels vectored to a sparsely inhabited portion on the far side of the supercontinent. A data point hovered over the expanse to reveal the name: Resilience. "Excellent," he said. "Our scanners have your vessels on screen moving away from the population centers. Why not simply evacuate your citizens directly from the cities, though?" "Sir," General Grant resumed his situation report, "we were only notified that the Covenant had a strong likelihood of arriving, not that it was imminent. With that in mind, we didn't want to risk getting caught with our pants down. In the event that they arrived before friendly forces, we didn't want to lose all our escape vessels in one fell swoop." "Very well, General. In any case, happy to be of assistance. We can work with that plan." Captain Fulton typed a command into his keypad once again, this time hailing all friendly vessels and inter-ship communications, and included the General on an encrypted net, established courtesy of Harvest Moon and Aretes. "Task Force Lima, Boundary. New orders. Set course for a geosynchronous equatorial orbit. We're moving on station to assist." He glanced left. "Nav, get with engineering. I want best speed to the planet. All vessels. The same." He set his gaze upon the main display by his station once again. "Commander Keller, lag behind. Once we're set up, I want you to begin deploying your Hornet mines in a spiderweb pattern in likely avenues of approach to Boundary's population centers." "Aye, sir," Commander Keller said. Now that she had a task and backup, the tension eased off her face. The display snapped off. "General Grant, we're coming. Sit tight and prepare whatever intelligence and troop dispositions you have established. Nefaris out." He felt the tug of his stomach as his orders were executed. The ship accelerated, and he could see on his port and starboard external displays that his cruisers and destroyers were doing the same. "Lieutenant Commander Shaw." He referenced his chronometer reading. His neural lace, tied to the ship's computer, had already calculated his next thought for him. The display read 1 hour and 16 minutes until arrival to high orbit over Boundary's capital city of Salvation, located on the southwestern region of the supercontinent. Inform Teal Force that they have 75 minutes to complete planning, arrange for reconnaissance, and deploy planetside. The Prowler answered flank speed in response to Captain Fulton's orders. In order to keep up with the larger vessels under his command, Commander Keller would initiate a 30-second overburn of her main engines, using the moon's own gravity as a slingshot to gain some speed. Bridge to Sierra 141, pack your gear. Pelican departs in 60 minutes to link up with the task force, the commander said over a closed channel dedicated to her mysterious cargo. Aye, ma'am. Gear is prepped. Standing by in the cargo bay, Cal responded. Spartans Cal and Sheila had both spent the last several weeks on Reach, rehabilitating from wounds sustained in separate engagements over the previous few weeks of heavy fighting in the Equinox system. As luck would have it, their timing couldn't have been more advantageous. While they had new organs flash-cloned and grafted, a shipment of Mjolnir Mk4B Skunkworks modifications had made their way to Dr. Halsey. With her blessing over the viability of such unique modifications, Sheila received an upgraded security intrusion package to her suit-borne security and surveillance suite. Cal had received a prototype optical lens emitter, super-hardened through proprietary zero-G compression manufacturing, to improve the clarity and responsiveness of her helmet, and, therefore, her lethality. These upgrades played to each Spartan's strengths, which was another reason why John 117, the Master Chief, had recommended them to assist Arthur and Solomon on this mission. Cal 141 had ice in her veins, tough as nails, and one of the more reserved of their clan, even by Spartan standards. Growing up on Reach, she was typically detailed with Gold Team to ensure their force protection measures were in place and always had an uncanny ability to get into places where she didn't belong. Once, with the help of Daisy 023, the pair managed to fool the security guards on a training mission into thinking their entire force of 12 cadets were raiding the food in their mess hall. Through a meticulously planned night of preparation, Sheila and Daisy infiltrated the security guards' shack during shift changes. One cadet to create a diversion, the other hacking into their video feed to put a loop of them in various positions throughout the cupboards of the mess hall, rummaging through food. Little did the wary guard know, however, that the food stolen was from the night before. They confused the entire platoon so badly, they ended up chasing Spartan 087 for half a day, while the rest of their squad exited the compound with 3 hostages and their guidon at the behest of Chief Petty Officer Mendez. In recent years, Cal had the unfortunate duty of rounding out Gold Team's roster. News of Daisy's death had hit her harder than she ever cared to admit. John had been present during her final moments, fighting to help a Pelican evacuate the planet they were engaged on. She remembered Daisy fondly for her ferocity and aggressive nature. Although she would never admit it to anyone, Cal secretly enjoyed listening to her tirades and observing her passionate nature on and off the battlefield. Now she wondered how the other members on her team were doing without her. Her injuries had poor timing. As she was whisked away back to Reach for rehabilitation, she lost even more time waiting for not only her wounds to heal, but also for her armor repairs as well. The Death's Hand finished its inertial acceleration burn around the planetoid, and an hour ticked off the mission clock. Cal and Sheila finished putting on the rest of the components of their Mjolnir armor in the miniaturized Spartan support module, and began throwing satchels, hard cases, spare components for their suits, and weapons onto the Pelican. Cal slid on her helmet and snapped the locking collar into place. A high-frequency whine hiss popped as the suit equalized pressure with the helmet. Sierra 141, this is Commander Keller. Go, Commander, the Spartan said. We're 3 minutes out. Having the hangar crew prep for atmosphere dump. Going to evacuate your bay to get you there a little faster. Captain Fulton seems eager to get started. Understood, ma'am. Cal threw another satchel of C-12 explosive charges over her head and onto a web of cargo netting, situated above and behind the jump seats of the dropship. She motioned toward the chin of the craft and caught Sheila's eye. A subtle nod of the helmet was all she needed. Training and fighting together for so long, nonverbal communication became second nature for them. It was time to get down to business. In the periphery of her heads-up display, she noticed a timer counting down from 3 minutes until the bay depressurized. Something she could never quite get used to after all these years in Mjolnir armor. The suit had read her mind, and projected the countdown before she could finish formulating the thought. The suit's onboard computer had taken the liberty of pinging the Prowler's AI to sync hangar depressurization. "All packed and ready to go, 3. Sheila threw a quick thumbs up as she disappeared into the cockpit of the craft. "Starting pre-flight checks now. Only a 5-minute ride once we evacuate the bay."